3 years went by before I again saw that enigmatic black sadhu, Kali Baba. In the intervening years, I had finished my bachelor's degree in economics and was back in Nepal courtesy of an airline ticket my parents had given me as a graduation gift. On my first visit, financed by a small inheritance from my paternal grandparents, I had spent most of my time hanging out, smoking cigarettes and spliffs with my Nepali friends, and playing soccer, chess, and chungi, the Nepali equivalent of hacky sack, to while away the hours. This time, though, I was working in order to finance my 5-month stay and had gotten a teaching gig at a school run by one of my friend's uncles. It was a pretty sweet deal. In exchange for 2 hours of teaching a day, 6 days a week, I got all the food and tea I could handle, plus a cushy room in the new home of my friend's other uncle, who happened to be one of the richest merchants in Bhaktapur. As an added bonus, the merchant's wife, known to us as Bauju, a kinship term meaning older brother's wife, took it upon herself to spoil me rotten, doting over me like a little girl caring for an injured nestling. I could have hardly asked for more amenable working conditions. During my free time, I would meet up with my friends to resume our previous activities and in general search out other inexpensive ways of passing the time. It was in pursuit of this rather lowly goal, cheap entertainment, that my friends and I ended up once again in Mahankal, home of Kalinath Agari Baba and Nepal's largest Trisul. The place was much changed from my first visit, when the hilltop had seemed to me singularly barren. Baba's hut had expanded into a full kuti, a circular stone and mud building with a pagoda-like roof, and the Trisul had been joined by a number of shrines to different deities in the Hindu pantheon, the largest one being directed to Santosi Mata, a goddess of recent origin whose main activity is, from what I gather, the protection of women. Next to the kuti, Baba now had a large garden filled with vegetables, as well as numerous Ayurvedic plants. We would walk up to Kali Baba's place from Bhaktapur on Saturdays, my day off, a journey of about 2 hours by foot to the top of the ridge that runs between Changunarayan Temple on the west side and Nagarkot, the highest point in the Kathmandu Valley, on the east. Pretty much dead center between these 2 points is Mahankal, formerly known as Mulakot, literally Radish Fort, and before that is the sacred spot where Ma Kali blessed Prithvi Narayan Shah's ambitions for forging a united Himalayan kingdom. To be fair, I don't know whether or not Ma Kali did, in fact, lend her support to Shah's schemes, but the historical record shows that with or without that blessing they were successful, and so the mythology claims divine approval, and the ways of the divine being inscrutable as they are, who am I to gainsay it? Although some part of me does insist that manufacture of the story after the fact of domination and consolidation is more likely. We would take off our shoes and sit inside the kuti with Baba and whatever random assortment of religious pilgrims, picnicking locals, and bored teenagers happened to be hanging around that day, listening to the BBC World Service news broadcast in consecutive languages, Hindi, Bangla, Nepali, English, or classic Bollywood musical hits on Baba's small transistor radio, gossiping about the goings-on in a nearby village or the latest political scandal, and always discussing, disagreeing, confirming, and reconfirming when the electricity would next go either off or on, depending on its current state. It was usually an odd mix of characters up at Baba's place, and one never knew quite what to expect. One Saturday you might find a trio of smiling ascetics on a walking tour of the entire Indian subcontinent, and the next Saturday the local police inspector just dropping by for a quick chillum and a cup of tea and a blessing from Baba. The chillum, of course, could always be expected. To be perfectly honest, it was a big part of the draw for many of the people who came to visit Baba, though by no means all of them. The consumption of Siva Bhuti, ganja or marijuana, has long formed a part of sadhu culture in Nepal and India. Though technically illegal for anyone but a sadhu to possess or use, ganja smoking by lay people at temples is generally tolerated by the authorities, and the use of cannabis is much more accepted by the population generally than even here in the U.S. In fact, during the Sankrati and Sivaratri festivals, it is common for people to make mazan, candies consisting of butter, sugar, and hash, which are enjoyed by everyone, man, woman, and child over the age of about 13. They say it gives one ananda, bliss. It sure makes dancing a lot of fun. In contrast to my first impression of Kali Baba, when he had spoken but 3 words to me, this time I found him to be quite warm and open, with a sly, puckish sense of humor. One Saturday we sat down in our accustomed places in the kuti and asked Kali Baba how things were going. "A few nights ago, cow coming, garden finished," he told us. "Oh, that's too bad," I replied, being familiar with the vagaries of wandering bovines and the damage they can wreak with their brute hooves and maws. "No problem," Kali Baba responded. "Next night, tiger coming, cow finished," he roared with laughter. What struck me most about him, though, was the sense of authenticity and genuineness that Baba exuded, such as I had never experienced before. Here was a man who not only claimed to believe all of the highfalutin talk about selflessness contained in Hinduism and every other religion, but actually appeared to live it. This was the overwhelming impression I had of him then, and it has continued to this day, that here is a man who is exactly who he says he is. We are so used to everyone we interact with having some ulterior motive, namely that of seeking something for themselves, that suddenly finding oneself in the presence of someone with whom that is manifestly not the case can have a rather profound effect on a person. One can relax, as it were, breathe out, let one's guard down. It is at once both comforting and invigorating. I kept finding myself feeling astounded by this totally authentic individual, thinking to myself, wow, a truly spiritual person. I didn't think any actually existed, and yet, here he is. My friends and I visited Kali Baba a number of times during that 5-month stay in Nepal, but it wasn't until the day before I was set to fly back to the U.S. that he asked me to help him build the school. We were standing outside on the edge of the hill, looking south through the black smoke of a dozen brick factories towards Bhaktapur on the far side of the valley, just barely visible through the haze. Baba pointed to a modest terrace about 20 yards down the hill. It wasn't much more than a flat spot next to the road, its only distinguishing feature a large hole that had been dug for some unknown reason in the middle of what would otherwise have been a fine spot for a picnic. "We build school there. You help?" "Help how?" I inquired, already knowing the answer. "You bring money. We build school. There." He pointed again. "How much money do you need?" I asked. Baba thought for a second. "Come," he said. "We ask." He had spied an old man smoking a cigarette a few yards distant from us and recognized him as a retired construction worker. We walked over and sat down next to him, and Baba proceeded to query him in Nepali about how much it would cost to build a small school. After a few minutes of conversation, the old man looked at me. 350,000, he said. "Rupees," Baba was quick to add. 350,000 rupees. I had to do some calculating in my head. 70 rupees to the dollar, so that would be about $5,000, I said, somewhat disbelieving. "Is that really all you need to start a school? $5,000? "Yes," Kali Baba said. $5,000. You bring, okay?" There was no coercion in his asking, only a genuine curiosity. What would this bearded foreigner say? I thought for a moment about what $5,000 could buy in the U.S., a cheap used car, a year of college tuition. "Sure," I replied. "Why not?" What else could I say?